This is the County Line Podcast, a production of Free Speech America. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Ranney, Garth Hilton, and Kevin Virgil.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the County Line Podcast. We are grateful that you are here with us today. And as usual, we are here in the Free Speech America virtual studios and looking forward to a great opportunity to talk about living liberty and learning liberty from the kitchen table to the county line. As usual, we have Chris Ranney here with us and Kevin Virgil, and we are interested in seeing what they have to say today. So, hey guys, how are you doing? Doing well.
Good.
Hanging in there. Big day at big day down in Des Moines at the state capitol today. I suppose we could talk about that for a little bit.
That'd be great. Yep.
And before we go there, can I just say, you guys have been outside today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yep. So yes, we are here situated in lovely Iowa, but we like to talk about all things, from national in scope to local in scope, but everything with that local flair in terms of what can we do as ordinary citizens locally to ensure liberty for ourselves and our posterity. So yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off and yes, see what we can talk about today.
Well, I'm going to share my screen or try.
Great.
Let's see if this works. I just found a cute meme that I wanted to share with our audience. I thought was kind of fun. There it is. These guys look a little edgy, maybe a little crazy, and for some reason, I kind of like that with my new FBI leadership. So,
yes,
they're both pretty intense.
Most likely, what they look like after they read the Epstein files and the January 6th files and everything else that they're going to be uncovering.
Yeah,
right.
Indeed.
Anyway,
I'm excited. I look forward to seeing what these two gentlemen can do. I can't even remember who was the AG under Biden. Real dead fish of a guy.
Merrick Garland.
Yeah, Merrick
Garland.
I mean, yeah,
he was a
real dead fish.
He was a whisker away from being a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, right.
Which would have been scary.
Trying to think of him and his lack of personality, and then how deadly effective he was. So I'm really praying for Cash and even Dan and their effectiveness. But at least we'll have some people that, look alive compared to Merrick Garland. I just, that guy on so many levels was just awful. But yeah, I'm really praying for them and hoping that we can see some great justice and rectifying of the direction of this ship, because it is tyranny.
Now it's totally shallow. It's totally shallow of me, but I was talking to a friend the other day. I said, one of the things I find really interesting about the team that Trump is building around him, compared to, say, under Biden, is just the level of physical attractiveness. If you guys notice that, I just feel like with Biden, and like I say, it's very shallow. Hey, I'm an old grandma, so, who am I to talk? But I just feel like the people that Trump has got around him are, maybe it's they're younger. I'm not really sure what it is, but for the most part, they're all relatively attractive people. Have you noticed that, or is that just me?
I don't think that's an accident. I've been reliably told that Trump likes to solve for, appearances on TV, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody who's going to present well on Fox or CNN or whatever network they're going to be on. He definitely factors that into his process.
Well, and I think there's some common sense to it, and probably some psychology behind it, that people are going to be more responsive to a pleasant face telling them something versus not. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Mm. Well,
yeah, no, I think that's very true.
I know I did see something on X, and it's very true. Just now, Dan Bongino gets to tell us all who the pipe bombers were at the DNC on January 6th, right?
That is a wild story. I just heard about this not too long ago. This whole thing with with Kamala Harris walking right by the supposed pipe bomb, and nobody had a problem with it, which it's just bonkers. Yeah, I really hope that there is a full blown like multi-network covered congressional investigation about that whole thing. It's
Yes.
just wild.
Indeed.
Well, in my mind, I don't know if generally with the American public it is, but I'm assuming it was some sort of operation set up by whoever, Capitol Police, FBI, just to make
Absolutely.
it, just to throw shade at the protesters. And,
Right.
I'm assuming it was planted there by some operative. I don't know. I don't know if most
course.
people have got to that point. I just know with what I listen to, I've been there for months and months that's been the case with that issue. So.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Nope. Call that a false flag. And I think that is the most likely explanation at this point, right? And that's why I think it's incredibly important for the American people to see an investigation take place and really find out what happened there. Like call a lot of people on the carpet. I'd very, very much like to see that.
Yep.
Fun fact, do you guys know the story about these 51 intelligence officers, that lost their clearances? Yeah, one of those guys used to be my boss a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of people in that sphere that I think need to be called on the carpet and under oath, like compelled to explain themselves and their decisions over the last few years.
I agree. The other thing that I find puzzling, if these, just say the 51 intelligence officers, not to mention other people involved in other false flags or outrageous behaviors and claims, the consequences for them upon being caught for what they've done are, I would guess, will be severe. And so I'm just kind of shocked and puzzled that people would participate in those sort of things, knowing how bad it would be if and when they were found out, and is their reasoning behind it just assuming that it would never come out and they would never be brought to justice or held accountable for it, and so they really had no fear and no worry about trying to do the things that they've done? Is it because they just really didn't think they would ever be brought to account? I mean,
well, I think and I think that's a reasonable assumption, right? I mean, look at what's coming out now regarding the Kennedy assassination 60 years later, right? We haven't even started unpacking that yet, but we now know there were two shooters, right? After we've been told for our entire lives that there was just one lunatic up in the Texas Book Depository. I mean, yeah, people you've had government operatives, subverting the will of the people for decades now with no accountability, no retribution. So why would this time be any different, right? But suddenly, I mean, I don't want to sound overly optimistic here, but for the first time in certainly my adult life, there's a chance that they may be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hopeful, and what can I say? As soon as we do see some perp walks, then I'll be like, this is real. This is real.
Yeah, exactly right.
Until then,
it's all.
Yeah. But I'm praying for it.
Right. Well, one of my favorite shows, in fact, is on tonight. It's on Monday nights. It's on a Rumble channel, but the name of the program is Baseless Conspiracies. And every week, the two co-hosts talk about conspiracies from the past, and some of them, they've gone back. They're pretty wild. They're like, what's going on in Antarctica, and whatever happened to Tartaria. I don't know if you guys have heard those stories.
Oh yeah. Oh, but that's a deep rabbit hole.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
But they also have addressed things like 9/11, the Kennedy assassination. All these things that we have been given a certain narrative. surrounding, which seems reasonable, but I think many Americans, and me included, are kind of looking back with a new set of eyes in terms of, is the story we were told really what happened? And it's kind of, at least for me, when I first kind of opened the door onto the possibilities that a lot of what we've been told, my entire lifetime, it was devastating. Like, it's kind of like foundationally everything that your life and your understanding of your world and your country and is built on, all of a sudden it's shaken and put into such doubt, and then you begin wondering, well, what can I believe? What's true, what isn't true, what haven't I been lied to?
Right.
So it's been difficult, and I've kind of been going through that the last few years. But of course, then it reminds me of the scripture verse that talks about don't build your house on sand, build your house upon the rock. And it's been a faith builder for me at the same time. Anyway, sorry, kind of a rabbit hole, but
yeah, no, that's good, very good. Well, do we want to talk about the House Bill 242? And
let's dive in.
Yeah.
So I think it's breaking news, right? It just happened an hour before we started recording here.
Right.
Yep.
So I saw we voted straight down party lines, right? 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat on the subcommittee, and passed through that. Now it goes to the floor for a full House vote on Thursday.
Yep.
That's what I read. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Very good.
And then apparently there was some drama. Iowa's loudest idiots decided to all show up and start protesting, and were marched off in handcuffs.
Yeah.
As part of the entertainment.
Right.
Am I the only one that assumes that these people are astroturfed and that they're being paid by? I used to think they were being paid by some nefarious organization. Now I realize they were probably being paid by some US aid grant. So
maybe they haven't spent all the money yet before the budget started getting slashed.
Yeah.
Look, it's certainly possible, right? I think there are plenty of lunatics out there that would do that for free, right? I mean,
I was going to say, unless you want to call federal student aid to college students, getting paid to be AstroTurf. So
I just saw one of the photos. I was just reading up on this just before the podcast here, and as expected, significant percentage of the detainees have purple and otherwise fluorescent colored hair. And we're, generally, don't really have jobs to be at. So they figured, they might as well spend our time at the Capitol. It's just wild, right? Like those intimidation tactics have worked a lot in the past few years, right? They show up, start screaming. They tell you that they're going to kill themselves if we don't do what they want, meet their demands. And I think in a lot of states, it's pretty successful. Look, apparently it's so successful in the state of Maine that the governor is fighting to keep men and women's sports, right? Mm-hmm. Despite overwhelming opposition at the national level. It's, I think we're on the back nine of this whole trans rights debate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have an article that I was reading this morning. It was written by Steve Holt. On it, regarding this issue, and I appreciated it, at least informationally, because I felt like it gave me a broader understanding of the whole issue. Because we've heard in the past about different votes that have been passed and signed into law in terms of limiting trans issues from interfering with different components, schools or whatever. But I found it interesting. I didn't realize that they had been put under, protected status back in 2007, I think is when I read. And that's when the all 3 arenas in Iowa were controlled under the Democrats. And they were, put under protected class. And so
right.
How important it is then to move this forward, because that strips away the ability for them to take this to the Supreme Court. And honestly, I feel bad. I feel a little guilty as an Iowan involved in politics, I don't know what the status is of our Iowa Supreme Court. I know it's not been that long ago when it was fairly liberal. I don't know that that's improved in probably the last 5 years since I've paid attention to it. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I always try to see the other side of the debate here, and I understand the concerns. Right, there have been times in our nation's history that people who live what's called alternative lifestyles have been subjected to significant persecution and even violence. I get it. I understand the motivation to seek protected status. But look, though, even like the pendulum can only swing so far, right? When your rights are bumping up against the rights, for my daughter to not have some pervert sharing her locker room, which has happened to a lot of teen and even adult, like college age girls and women in this country over the last few years, right? The conversation's over as far as I'm concerned.
mm-hmm.
And that is what they're fighting for, right? They're fighting to elevate their rights over the rights of just normal normal girls and women, which is just it's mind blowing to me that we allowed the debate to get this far out of hand. So I'm glad to see Iowa tacking back toward the center. There's certainly no discrimination being exercised against the trans community, right? I mean, they should feel free to live their lives to the extent that they are not interfering or infringing upon the rights of others, like those those kids who want to just make sure that they're women in the changing room, or that they're not competing against men. So yeah, I think it's extremely supportive of what happened today, and I'm confident, given the makeup of the House, that it'll pass the House on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. I have a personal story I could share. It relates to this issue. It's not exactly, but my youngest daughter, when she was in high school, participated in a musical group at her school. And there was a young man who was a classmate of hers who identified as gay. And he was very well liked. I mean, the kids all palled around, after practice. They'd spend time together and they'd chat. And he began telling the girls stories about his boyfriends. And he was comparing, and, this is a little town east of Council Bluffs,
Yeah.
I'm kind of at the place where I'm like, was he just making these things up to be sensational, or was it true? I don't know. But anyway, sure. He would tell these stories about he had these 2 or 3 boyfriends, and he decided he liked one over the other because a certain part of his anatomy was larger than the other guys. It's like, okay.
How old is this kid?
He was like 16. Yeah. So my daughter came home. Well, that's not, whatever. She came home and she started telling me this story, and I'm like, that is not appropriate for a thing to be talked about, within your jazz choir. It's just not okay. And I put a call into the school principal the next day and kind of relayed this to him. And the principal basically said, well, we can't discriminate against people because, they might be gay. And, so we really can't do anything about it. And, I pointed out to the principal, I said, well, it's his choice. I'm not taking exception with that, but talking about that, in a school event, in a school activity, and having that kind of a conversation, I would be just as upset if one of her female classmates were making the same comments about her boyfriends. It's not appropriate. It's not an appropriate thing to talk about. And so I feel like now versus then, I'm hoping that more common sense has returned to the public arena, to the schools, where, they, just because someone says they're gay or transgender or in some kind of special protected group, all of a sudden they are allowed to get away with anything because of this special status. And so I guess that was my personal brush with that. And I just hope there's more common sense returning, and I think the tide's turning back the other way, which is good.
I think the culture is beginning to revert a little bit. I wouldn't count on things changing in our schools very quickly, and maybe I'll get in a little bit of trouble for saying this, but in general, I think that our academic institutions are led by some of the weakest people in our country, who are terrified to take stands and do the right thing. Look at even at the very top at the Ivy League, like these administrators who were defending all of these insane anti-Jewish, anti-Israel protests last year, right? Refusing to condemn people calling for mass murder. Not trying to elevate. I'm not trying to conflate that with
right.
refusing to take have a conversation with a kid in a rural Iowa town. But generally, I think we I wish we had stronger leadership in academia, but yeah, I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think we're going to be there anytime soon.
Well, and that ties really closely in with many conversations and efforts that we've tried to make with Free Speech America and then other organizations I'm a part of, to the local issue. And for instance, our school boards, who is sitting on our school boards? And at least in the town I am nearest to, Council Bluffs, as of the last election last year, all of our school board positions are filled by liberals. Some of them I would consider extreme liberals, especially in terms of transgender. They want kids to be able to transition with drugs through the school without telling parents, and just very extreme when it comes to those kind of issues.
Right. Why do you think that is? Why do you think academia, because that's happening all over the country, right? There's been so many instances of teachers and administrators being outed for pushing for kids to be to go through these surgeries, right, without disclosing it to their parents. And I've heard stories, even out in California, from friends, right, firsthand, secondhand accounts of like parents who were at risk of losing their children to the state because they were standing in the way of this. Like, why are all these people who are just just have these insane views on this topic? How are they all ending up in academia teaching our kids? Like, why are we allowing this to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, as a parent, it's just, the most insane thing, right? Like, if you want to, I would point to that issue, that and the border, as the two reasons that I think the latest poll shows that the Democratic Party only has a 36% approval rating nationwide right now, right?
Right.
The Republican Party, not that the Republican Party is perfect, far from it, but, like they're 15 points higher than Democrats. It's the widest gap since they started tracking this after World War II. Why is the left allowing these lunatics to just drag them down to the bottom of the ocean like this? They're not. There doesn't seem to be any effort to rein in the the lunatic fringe right now. It'd be like if the KKK controlled the Republican Party. It's I'm still trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Actually, they did used to control the party. It was the Democrat Party, but
good point.
Fair point. That touche. Yeah. All right.
So but just a new generation of lunatics.
You're like the question, right? It's I don't understand why, like the governor of Maine or AOC, like why they're not just having this conversation internally, like these people need to go away, right? They're a liability. Like I've got a lot of time for James Carville. I don't agree with, he and I agree on almost nothing, but I admire the fact that he speaks his mind and he's intellectually honest and he's a fighter. Mm-hmm. The guy was just ranting the other day about how, the Democrats have completely lost the plot and they've got no choice right now but to just, be nice to Trump and do whatever he wants because, the time for pushing back is coming, but it's not right now because they're so far behind. Right. I don't get it. Why, in a state where the Democrats are outnumbered in the House like 2-1. There's no Democrat in a leadership position right now other than the state auditor. I mean, why are you getting behind like this trans rights issue that less than 10% of the state supports? Like, why are you okay with like pushing for like biological men to play in women's sports when the vast majority of the electorate are their parents and grandparents of girls? Like, why would you ever think that this is a good idea? Like all of the arguments for that issue aside, like politically, I don't understand like how they think this is how do they think they're going to come on top at this point with that?
Well, Garth and I could refer you to an author. His name is James Lindsay. I don't necessarily agree with him on everything, but he has spent some extensive time in writing, talking about Marxism, rules for radicals, and how the Marxists have really, for many years, probably before I was born even, decided to take over our country. And it began with taking over higher education and then moving down.
Sure.
I have a young lady, oh my goodness, beautiful, smart, sweet, kind. She was in our youth group, and I led a Bible study with her. This is 10 years ago when she was in high school. She went off to Iowa State, and I think she studied something in the arena of education. I'm not exactly sure what. Her parents are lovely, sweet Lutherans, very conservative parents, and I am friends with her on Facebook, and the thing she posts about is just crazy. And I think it upsets me more than a stranger because I know her, and I just have an affection and a fondness for her, and am just so saddened that she's been brainwashed, or whatever the term is you want to use. And I'm certain it was because of professors that convinced her of this different way of looking at things. So,
Well, so much of it has to do with this secularization of our society to the point where, especially in academia and even in the naturalism of the university, where there's this complete effort for, easily the last 100 years of wanting to be able to write God and morality out of the story of humanity. And those efforts were primarily taken up by the academics, and especially in an age of scientism. And one of the things that I am really grateful for is like the work of the Discovery Institute and all that they have been doing for the past few decades to push back against scientism and naturalism, in the sense that everything in the world can just be explained by natural processes, and that there is nothing known as the spiritual or the religious, and that all of this is just stuff that all must die away because we're evolving beyond these ancient ideas. But what we're seeing is that's not actually true. What was being reported to us is that mental health is being devastated, primarily in the Western cultures, because of this slide into just a naturalistic worldview, where there isn't any meaning beyond what I say. And this whole, postmodern deconstruction that's been going on now for a long time. So I do think that there is a shift taking place, and we'll see how deep that is, how long lasting it is. But yeah, I'm grateful for it, and definitely want to encourage anybody who's interested in just the fascinating design arguments that we're seeing from our scientific discoveries, and just how much of a crisis even like Darwinism is in right now. And does that necessarily point you to any specific religion or anything else? But no, it's just saying, look, there is something that binds this universe together that is not just matter. And so, yeah, I think that's, a really important part of the shift that's taking place.
It's interesting, thinking in terms of religion or faith, or, whether, even if you're not religious, but you're a deist or you believe in creation, but just the idea of religion having such an important influence on people. And I think there's many people who have described the whole leftist agenda as a form of religion, whether it's the transgender movement or the environmental movement, or you can pick any number. And many of the ways that believers of those different agendas act, it's a religious issue for them. It's such a deeply held belief that they can't listen to reason or other arguments or have a reasonable conversation without just exploding and starting to sling names at people. It was interesting. I went to a class here in town last week on gardening. I'm a gardener. It's one of the things I love to do. And the class specifically was on native plants. And there's been quite a big push, even recently, toward gardening with native plants, which I think is great. I love that. That doesn't mean I'm not going to grow plants from China, but the presenter, there were two presenters, and they gave us some really good information. But one of the presenters, I found it really interesting. Just her hair wasn't pink, but I could just tell by the way she was embracing the whole topic. Like her goal by the I think end of this year was to rip out every single plant that was in her yard that was not a native plant and replace it only with native plants. And, first of all, just knowing what I know about plants, that'd be very expensive to do. But I just found it strange that her adoption of that process and that idea to only grow native plants in her yard, it seemed very extreme, and it almost seemed more like a religion than it did just a hobby or even a conservation viewpoint. But that just struck me, just her commitment to it and her passion for it. And she was on the edge of being very condemning of people that would want to plant something in their yard that wasn't a native plant. She was holding back, but she was right there on the ragged edge. And I thought, I bet I could identify, what her positions were on other issues just based on her grasp and her presentation, of this topic. So, but again, it just struck me. It almost seemed like her adoption of this was more of a religion than anything, than a hobby.
Chris, the male equivalent of that dogma is talking to somebody who, buys Ford or Chevy pickups and what they think about the other people. Right.
Right.
But no, I seriously, I think that, look, I think that the whole woke thing for a lot of people is religion. Right. I think that I've done a fair amount of reading on this too. And I've come to believe that I think the human mind, the soul, is hardwired to need to believe in something bigger than yourself just to survive and not go insane. Right. So if you, if and I think this is probably why, back in the, the Middle Ages, right. When the, like when Islam was sweeping across the European continent, right. Like they would conquer, they would conquer a new area, whether it's like, the Spain when the Moors came over, and they would, if they would ask you, their new subjects what their religion was, and if they were a Christian, they would leave you alone. But if you didn't have a religion, then you had to convert to Islam, right? Because I think even back then they knew that anybody who doesn't believe in anything can't be trusted, right? I think that, and if you don't believe in any sort of religion, whatever it is, I think that you open yourself up to all sorts of nonsense, right? This is why people join cults.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why people believe all these insane these insane things. That math is racist, or any other nonsense that like the religion tells you must be true. I think it's extremely important for people to believe in something. So society's better when that something is constructive as opposed to the opposite.
Right. And I have a theory I've been talking with people about the last few years that has to do with, and I'm not saying it's original to me. I've maybe read it somewhere and now I'm claiming it as my own, but and it goes back to what you said, Kevin, and that people, I think, are hardwired to have faith in something, to have belief in something, to follow some sort of religion or belief system. And if you reject Christianity, or maybe even Hindu or Muslim, if you reject those religions, and then you have to find something, you have to search for something, to believe in. And I find that if you really think about the leftist goals and agendas, what their outcome is, ostensibly, their outcome is fairness for everyone, equality for everyone, peace for everyone, provision for they just want this utopia society. And I find it really interesting that what they want, I think, ultimately, or if they were to describe it as what they want, is heaven, what the Bible offers us as heaven. Now, I'm a Christian, believe the Bible word for word. And I think, that heaven is described in a certain way and is offered by people through faith in Jesus Christ. That's what I believe. But if you reject Jesus Christ, or you reject other religions that give you a roadmap, well, this is how you get to there. You have to create something else. So they've created this political movement, which is really a religion. And it's almost like they want heaven without God.
Maybe this is how we convert all of them. We tell them that heaven is really a communist utopia where nobody owns anything and everybody's happy, and all they have to do is be good Christians, and they'll get what they want.
Yeah, but again, when people talk about Satan or the Antichrist, we won't even get into all that, but he's not necessarily just against God or against Jesus, but his goal is to usurp or replace him. And so to me, it kind of fits into my theory that this is an alternative religion that's been provided for people to, fulfill that need for belief and religion, but they do it in a way without, the Bible, the God of the Bible, but
right.
I don't know.
Yep. And I think that's where Lindsay is, dead on, especially in terms of getting back to the whole academia and, the problems that it's created within our public school systems and so forth. But is that Marx did not promulgate an economic theory. Marx was an evangelist for a new religion. Yes. And that's the truth of it. So ultimately, we're at this evolution of this new religion of Marxism. And, hopefully because of free speech and organizations like ours and a willingness to speak freely on the airwaves. Are they called airwaves anymore? Digital waves? I don't know. Like here on this podcast.
We still use airwaves.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. Be able to have these conversations and work through this stuff. And also, just like the legislature is going to do this week. And hopefully, do what their constituents in Iowa want them to do that represents our values. And yeah, that's one of the things that's still beautiful about America, even though, there's many issues that are going to die in committee as well, and not further liberty locally like we'd like it to be furthered. But yeah, I'm glad that they're taking this up, and going to pass it because it could have been otherwise. So,
yeah. So our hour's almost up. I don't think we've covered everything we were hoping to. What other topics? Oh, and my job is to remind people, whatever platform that you are enjoying our podcast on, to like it or subscribe if there's a subscription option. So please do that to help us get our little bitty podcast up and off the ground.
Share.
So we appreciate that.
Share is even the most important.
Yeah, tell your friends.
Yes.
Yep.
Share,
especially with local friends. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
tell everybody in your cult that they need to watch the County Line podcast.
Indeed.
Yeah. I need some more hate mail. It's been a week or so since I've had any. So
I know we have to jump in a couple of minutes, but there is one more issue in Des Moines right now I really want to see make it to the floor. And I don't think it's been given a bill number yet, but there is a bill that has been written that would limit the governor's emergency powers.
Right.
You recall that our fearless leader, the one who closed all the churches during COVID,
right?
Right. She used her emergency powers to do that, and now that she's up for re-election and she's vulnerable because she's not popular, I'm told, is extremely concerned that the public is going to remember that she did that back in 2020. So I, for one, would very much like to see that bill go to, ideally make it to a committee and make it to the floor. I think that the state Republican establishment will do everything they can to stop that from happening. But
absolutely,
I think to our handful of listeners we have at this stage, and County Line podcast number 2, if people can start getting the word out that is a bill that needs to see the light of day, then I think that would be fantastic.
Yep.
Do we know any person or group that's kind of behind that or trying to get that up and going?
Well, I think I think I could say his name, but Zach Deacon is the legislative member of the House who has proposed the bill and has drafted it and is trying to get it to the floor.
Good.
There are several others in the legislature that want to see that go to the floor as well. Quite a few other Republicans that would prefer it not happen. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. That's great. I love that.
All right. Yeah, that would be one of the things that I'd like to explore more as we wrap up this episode of the County Line podcast, where we're learning and living liberty from the kitchen table to the county line, is we need to be able to empower our legislators that we send to state capitals to be able to get to the bills to the floor more easily, to have some kind of threshold where they can more easily be forced to vote yes or no, because there are so many good bills that are proposed by good men and women who are more interested in liberty, but they get killed by the uniparty, even in Iowa. And that's
especially in Iowa.
That's where we have basically a bunch of Democrats running as Republicans, because you're going to have to be a Republican to get elected. And so, yeah, we need to figure out a way. And I know this is going to be a heavy lift, but we can't go on living just allowing good bills to die in committees. I mean, the entire legislative apparatus in Des Moines is then controlled by probably no more than 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There's a problem there that we've got to try and figure out something. But anyways, we're out of time now. I can't tackle that today, but I really appreciate you, Kevin and Chris, and I'm grateful to be here myself as we continue to learn and live liberty from the kitchen table to the county line. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Garth.
Thanks.
Appreciate
See you
it.
next time.
All right.
Talk soon.
God bless.
If you are new to the podcast, be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and join us next week for the next installment of the County Line Podcast.